You are not going to believe what we just uncovered from the backstage area at Backlash, and if you have been following the Bloodline story for any length of time, what I am about to share with you is going to completely reshape everything you thought you understood about where this faction is headed in 2026. Stay with me all the way to the end, because the final piece of this puzzle is the part that nobody in the wrestling world is talking about yet. Welcome back to Wrestling Juice, the channel that brings you the stories happening behind the curtain, the moments that never make it to the broadcast feed, and the emotional reality of professional wrestling that the cameras are never supposed to catch. My name is on this channel because I take this seriously, and what I am walking you through today is one of the most significant backstage developments the Bloodline storyline has ever produced. For months now, the central tension within the Bloodline has been the uncontrollable and unpredictable nature of Jacob Fatu. This is a man who operates at a level of violence and intensity that even his own family has struggled to manage. The question that has been hanging over the entire faction has always been whether Roman Reigns could truly harness that energy or whether Jacob would eventually become a liability too dangerous to tolerate. That tension has been building quietly in the background while the main event picture continued to evolve, and nobody, not the fans, not the analysts, and apparently not even Paul Heyman, anticipated that it would come to a head the way it did on the night of Backlash. Approximately 15 minutes after the broadcast concluded and the arena began to empty out, footage from a secondary camera positioned near the loading dock area captured something that the production team never intended for public consumption. Jacob Fatu was alone in a narrow concrete corridor, and the body language on display was unlike anything we have ever seen from him inside or outside of a wrestling ring. The swagger was gone. The predatory energy that defines his entire presence had completely evaporated. He was packing back and forth in tight, anxious movements, stopping periodically near the door to Roman Reigns' private locker room, looking for all the world like a man who was carrying an enormous and painful weight on his shoulders. When Roman finally emerged from that locker room, the confrontation that followed defied every expectation. There was no explosion of aggression, no power struggle, and no theatrical posturing for an invisible audience. What happened instead was something far more raw and far more human than anyone covering this story was prepared for. Jacob Fatu stood before the tribal chief with tears running openly down his face, and in that moment, the Samoan werewolf was not a monster or a weapon or a force of nature. He was a young man standing in front of the head of his family, trying to find his way back home. The words he spoke were quiet, but they carried an enormous amount of weight. He looked Roman directly in the eye and admitted that he was sorry, that the weeks of chaos and destruction had been a mistake, and that what he wanted more than anything else was to be part of the family again. He then dropped to one knee in a gesture of submission that sent the small group of backstage witnesses into complete silence. This was not a calculated move designed for television. This was a genuine moment of personal reckoning from a man who had gone too far and knew it. What makes this so significant from a storytelling and competitive standpoint is that Jacob Fatu has just handed Roman Reigns an extraordinary amount of power. By coming forward voluntarily, by choosing humility over pride, he has placed himself entirely at the mercy of the tribal chief's judgment. Roman's response to this moment, the way he reportedly placed his hand on Jacob's head in what can only be described as a gesture of acceptance and reclamation, signals that the original architecture of the Bloodline is not dead. It has simply been through a period of stress testing, and it has survived. The implications for the remainder of the 2026 WWE calendar are genuinely difficult to overstate. A unified Bloodline with Jacob Fatu operating under Roman's authority rather than against it represents a level of collective power that no other faction on the roster can currently match. The emotional authenticity of this reconciliation also gives the entire storyline a depth that pure athletic competition cannot manufacture on its own. This is what makes professional wrestling at its best so compelling. The drama between these moments is just as important as anything that happens between the ropes. The message that has been sent to the rest of the locker room in the aftermath of Backlash is clear, and it is sobering. The Bloodline has weathered its most serious internal crisis and come out the other side not weakened, but recalibrated. The werewolf has returned to the pack, the hierarchy has been re-established, and anyone who was hoping that the cracks within the family would widen into a permanent fracture is going to need to completely revise their expectations. Roman Reigns is heading into the next chapter of this story with his family intact and with a weapon that is now more focused and more dangerous than ever before. Make sure you are subscribed to Wrestling Juice so you do not miss a single update as this story continues to develop, and click the video on your screen right now for more exclusive backstage coverage.